Shalom, I am Rabbi Nathan Davidovich, speaking to you on behalf of the webyeshiva.org, speaking to you from Efrat, Israel. In these next few moments, I'm going to discuss the part of the Parsha of this week. We actually have two Parshot, we have Achrei Mot and Kadoshim. Towards the very end of Parsha Achrei Mot, there's a very interesting sentence which talks about life, talks about living life through the performance of mitzvot. It says, "Es mishpatai tasu, you shall carry out my laws, v'chukosai tishmaru, and you shall observe my statutes." The word chok really means those things you don't understand. So often we might think that we only have to do those things that we can understand. If it doesn't make any sense, then we don't have to do them. No, the chukim, those statutes that have no apparent meaning, that those are things we observe because we are showing that this is the will of God and we want to apply ourselves to do the will of God. Then the sentence goes on, "Lelechas bohem," to walk in them, to walk in them. Ani Hashem Lokechem, I am the Lord your God. Ushmartem es chokosai, es choshpotai, asher yaso osam adam. When you do these things, v'chai bohem, you shall live with them. Ani Hashem Lokechem, I am the Lord your God. So we have this commandment of v'chai bohem, you shall live. From here, of course, the sages, as is well known, derive that the performance of a mitzvah is secondary to a human life. So if it comes to the question of saving a life, you can violate Shabbos. Pekuach nefesh is docha Shabbos. We're going to talk about a different thing. It's interesting, the wording of laleches, to walk in them. Rabbi Yeshia Tursky, Zachrei Levracha, brings the Ksab Sofer. He says, what this means to walk in the mitzvos is to constantly move. That mitzvos, as well as life, cannot be stagnant. You can't just sit still and expect to progress in your spirituality. He says you constantly must go and proceed forward. And he likens it to the situation of when somebody is working to make a living. You're going to pursue every opportunity to increase your livelihood. You're going to run after it. But he says the problem with doing mitzvos is sometimes we'll get really involved and do one mitzvah, but then we forget that we can't stop there. You have to go on and do another mitzvah. And he tells the story. He says that in order to progress spiritually, we have to anticipate doing a mitzvah. He tells the story of the Berditchever Rebbe, who on the last day of Pesach, just as Pesach was ending, he would sit up all night waiting for the dawn so that he could be able to perform the mitzvah of putting on tefillin, because during Pesach, you don't put on tefillin. He was so anxious to do the mitzvah that he was awake all night long waiting for the opportunity to do that mitzvah. Now, the Tibot Shalom has an interesting discussion in terms of the language v'chai bohem, you shall live by them. And the sages have a dispute. They say, well, one says it means you shall live by them and you will get life in this world. The other says, no, you'll gain olam haba, you'll gain life in the world to come. So what is the difference? The Tibot Shalom says this refers to the way you do a mitzvah. And it ties into what I said a moment ago about being anxious to do a mitzvah. He says, you have to do a mitzvah, tzarech l'kaim a mitzvah b'chiyut. You have to put life into the mitzvah. He says, every mitzvah, every commandment that a Jew fulfills, he should fulfill it b'tlahavut. hitlavut. Hitlavut, which means fire. You got to be on fire. As Davidovich says, King David says, "Call atzmosai tomarnu Hashem." All of my limbs are praising you, O God. When we're doing a mitzvah, we have to be completely absorbed in doing that, fulfilling that commandment. Not not just do it uh, as a rote thing. Your whole body should be involved, and that's what he says it means to do the mitzvah that way. And the Rebbe of Karlin, uh, Shlomo of Karlin, said that he heard it announced in heaven that if a Jew does all the mitzvahs and keeps Shabbos, but doesn't really feel anything about doing them, just does it because it's a thing to do. My parents did it, I'll do it. But it's a rote thing. He says if he doesn't have the lavut, the fiery burning as he's and the enjoyment of doing the mitzvot, what happens? He'll get rewarded for the mitzvot. He'll be able to go into heaven, into Gan Eden. But what will happen? What's he doing there? While everybody is sitting around enjoying the presence of God, he will be sitting on a bench. He'll be benched, um, not feeling anything, just as he did in this world. So they're teaching us that if you want to bring the mitzvahs to a fuller life in this world, you have to put your energy into it. You have to put a fiery nature, hitlavut, into it. Now, we also, according to the one who says that this is a reward that you'll get by in the world to come if you do the mitzvahs properly, the question is raised. We are taught that we should not do a mitzvah for an ulterior reason. We should not be like a servant serving a master to receive a reward. We should serve God not because we're looking for God to give us anything, but because we know that God is our creator and we love God and we have to be close to God and pray to God and sing to God all the time. But we see that the Torah does tell us that reward comes. We have, for example, the second paragraph of the Shema. It says, if you listen and do these commandments that I command you today, then he said, I will give you the rain in your season. I will do good things. There are lots of references that if we do good things will happen to us. So isn't that a contradiction where it says we should serve God without expectation of reward? No, it's not a contradiction. What he is saying is that serving God, doing the mitzvahs with the proper spirit, called Atzmosai Tomorrow Hashem, all of your body is serving God, that the result of that, it's a fact of nature. The result of that is that you will get rewards. We know that we have a law of gravity. The law of gravity says you take something, you drop it, you don't have to think about it, you don't have to look for a result, it's going to fall. Same thing. When you do a mitzvah, by doing the mitzvah, not for the purpose of getting anything, but for the purpose of showing that you want to fulfill the will of God, then you will receive the reward. The important thing is v'chai bohem, to constantly be moving, to constantly put your right intentions into doing the mitzvah. And by doing that, you will then be able to progress on a spiritual level higher and higher. I thank you for listening on behalf of the webyeshiva.org. I wish everybody a wonderful Shabbat, and I wish everybody long life and a life in which we can properly serve Hashem with all of the parts of our body. Shabbat Shalom.